Hey everyone, hey internet. So welcome to Hey CTO podcast. This is the second season, and today we have Diogo Guerra from Feedzai. We are going to have the chance to get to know him. Welcome, Diogo.
Thank you, and happy to be here, Sara and Pedro. Thank you for the invitation.
Our pleasure.
I know that Pedro already know you, but me and the rest of our listeners don't know you probably yet.
Maybe
So
yes,
can you
maybe
tell
no.
us?
We don't
Maybe
know.
yeah, we don't know. So could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Diogo Guerra. I'm the SVP of Engineering at Feedzai. I live in Coimbra, in Portugal. So not in Lisbon, not in Porto. It's also possible to be successful in other cities in Portugal. I have a son, 4-year-old, that's basically breaks my brain a lot of a lot of times. I'm a CrossFit addicted as well. For the ones that like sports,
Sarah is into that.
are you
Yeah,
CrossFit
I'm
addicted as
another
well?
one. Yep, every day.
and and I like also traveling, cars. I like cars a lot. And in the end, I'm engineering at heart, and I like to work on distributed systems and reliability and performance. That's my geeky side, and that's it. It's me in a nutshell.
No,
And
super cool.
Feedzai. Could you
Yeah.
elaborate that a bit more? What's Feedzai? What's the challenge that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, sure. So Feedzai, we have been evolving ourselves, right? As I would say, any company in the market. And today, what we aim to do is to transform how basically commerce and money moves around the world by basically protecting the transactions and protecting people from not only fraud, but also as we have entered a few years back on the anti-money laundering side, where I would say it's actually even more important, even that the financial losses are not as big. The thing is, behind money laundering, there's human trafficking, there is drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and that's also a very cool side of what we do by basically helping and finding um, organizational crime and be able to help banks and other financial institutions to stop it.
Super cool. Like you really can't get a much better purpose than that. No.
Yeah.
Tell us one thing. Well, I kind of know your story, which is great, But if someone takes a look to LinkedIn, one can see that there is definitely a strong connection, between you, Diogo, and also at least two of the co-founders of Feedzai, Paulo and Pedro. I think that you're all from Coimbra.
Yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit about the story of how all that started? I think that it was kind of some you were doing some study with Pedro supervising it, I think, or it was Paulo, and then kind of all of a sudden the three of you kind of working together. So can you share a little bit more about that adventure that is today Feedzai to be
sure.
right?
Actually, it started way back. So I usually say that I literally spend more time with Paulo than with my wife. So and I'm with my wife already for 10 years. So
Wow.
actually, Paulo was the first of the three co-founders that I've met first. He was actually professor right in the first year of the university. Then probably the third year as well, and then by the end of the masters. And with Pedro, it was I think the first time on the fourth year already on the masters, and then he basically invited me to do the master thesis with him, and he had a cool idea with an investigator from Oracle in California, which then led to us submitting the prize here in Portugal at the time. This is for the dinosaurs, the prize that was Beige Inovação that we won. It was actually the first time that a computer science project won that prize. And at the time, basically, they had a number of students that were doing the master thesis with them, different topics. Actually, most of the topics then converged to in some way to Feedzai. But it were like 5 or 6 students doing the master thesis with them, and basically they invited all of us to join this challenge. And actually, Bizarro was smart enough. He said, "Hey, I know you probably will get an offer from Oracle, but I know how these things work. They will take some time. You probably need to pay your bills. So why don't you join us? And then I know that we won't be able to compete, but meanwhile, if this takes 6 months, 9 months, you at least you have a way to pay your bills." I said, "Okay, let's see." And 9 months later, I actually got that offer from Oracle, but I was already, let's say, bought into the idea and the dream of the company, which we were trying to know what we would be doing, but actually we were just trying to find. We had a technology. We were trying to find what we would be doing. We were not at all in the fraud space or AML, and but there was always this focus of we want to be a worldwide company. We don't want to be local.
Wow.
We go big or go home, and that was always the the way that the 3 co-founders uh, thought about the company. And I think actually that's still preserves today. And I would say probably 13 years ago we were a bit naive, me especially for sure, and but always this mindset of we want to be big, we want to be the best in our space, pushed us in a way that we could do more than we would expect. And here we are today after basically 13 years and 650 people, and of course growing and actually accelerating our growth. I was actually looking. I think it was 2 years back. We did this thing in 2010. So basically, the first year we started the company. On the first dinner of the company, we were like 6 or 7 people. So we did a thing like let's do a time capsule, and we all wrote small papers on how much do we think the company would grow in people, in revenue, and as you might know, a bunch of engineers uh, out of the college just trying to guess these things. And again, it's 13 years ago. You wouldn't be talking about unicorns or money
Sure.
raised and so on in Portugal. And I think at the time, the best guess we had was the company would grow up to 150 people, and that was actually the
Wow.
outlier. I think there was no bet above 75 people, and uh,
Wow.
and again today we are here with this size and still growing.
I was going
Crazy.
to about to ask how what were your expectations in the beginning, but it seems that you wrote it down into 2010, right?
Yeah, we did it in a very naive way. It was very cool because then Paulo, again 10 years later, he actually picked up. I don't know if he put an alarm or not, but he picked up the photo of all of the papers. So it was not a physical time capsule. It was a photo of all those papers, and he brought it back to us and emailed. Of course, some of the engineers were not there at the time, but it was very cool that we saw the actual picture of small papers, everyone writing down people and revenue, and uh, and again, it's cool to look back and say we were so naive at the time, but actually we completely surpassed the expectations.
And tell us something. So, Diogo, like you're not part of the co-founder team, but you're pretty much like employee number in this case like 4 or 5,
Mhm.
and you've been at Feedzai the entire journey, right? You probably started as, a regular software engineer, and you just went, your way up to become an SVP of engineering. How hard was that? Like, did you see that you needed to, and this is a tricky question because it's quite complex what I'm asking, but did you see yourself reinventing every now and then to, to adjust to the company? And, because when I see, then all of a sudden it becomes, a leader of people and an SVP, and there is expectations, investors. How was that kind of, personal journey for you at Feedzai?
So basically, actually, I'm an SVP since 2012, which again, it's something that you do because we're trying to target big banks. And for the ones that don't know, basically big banks, everyone is a VP, right? So
Okay.
a VP, a regular engineer can be a VP, right? It's something weird, but it actually happens. So when you go and you pitch to a customer, you take the CEO, the CTO, and at least you need to take a VP. So I'm actually an SVP since 2012. However,
Cool.
at the time I was an SVP, but an engineer, and we were five, right? And today I still hold the exact same title, but again with a completely different set of responsibilities. 150 people, and under my management is not just developers, is operation, is IT and security and so on. And actually, sometimes if you change the role, it forces you to rethink. With me, it was slightly different, right? It's the role never changes, the title never changes. You are not forced to do something different, but of course, the what you are doing on a daily basis, it actually changes. And there have been some times, especially I would say, not when moving to manager, but to manager of managers, where you start to think, okay, is this really what you want? Then you start looking at, this is growing. Am I going to be the guy that it's here for when you are 100 people, when you are 150 people, 200, 300? And it's still, I still question myself, right? Am I the guy that will be able to take the engineering team to 500 people? I actually don't know. But I'm still happy, right? That's for me the gauge of should I be doing what I'm doing or not. Is first, of course, the feedback that I get from the founders and from the management, and second, am I happy? Do I wake up excited to do what I do? And I still do. That's also what then leads me to adjust, to change, to do something different. And definitely today, with all of these people under my guidance and leadership, it's completely different than when I started as an SVP of 5 people only.
Unreal journey. Wow.
Yeah. And how was that transition? So at that time of only 5 people, but still, well, you didn't change the role, but you mentioned that the responsibilities changed, and at some point you probably stopped to be someone more hands-on, to be someone with more management responsibilities. Do you remember that transition? How it was, the challenges, the things that you noticed that changed?
Well, it has been a huge struggle for me, and I think that's actually one of the things that keeps me, let's say, growing but still happy, is I still find some things that I'm hands-on, right? I'm proud to basically to basically get people in that can help me and do things better than I do. So basically, there are some things that I'm completely hands off, and there are other things that I still am a bit hands on. For example, I actually stopped about 18 months ago, but I was actually doing on call. I was part of the on call rotation. If something broke on our core products, I would be on the on call rotation, and then it's it. You wake up at 4 a.m. or 2 a.m. There is something that is broken, it's down, and there is no one else to help you, right? It's product in our case is the last line of defense, right? We have 3 levels of support. I was on the third level, and at that time it's like either you fix it or you change code, and that's it. And I always did it because not because I need it, but it would give me the raw truth of, okay, how is the product working, how are the engineerings doing things, how is the code evolving, because of course I'm not able anymore to go and do code reviews and so on,
Sure.
but at least I don't know, once every 2 months I would be on call. Sometimes it was harsh and have a few nights where you wouldn't sleep, but you just keep going, and that's it. But actually that gave me a lot of good insights, and I would say it would still feed the geek on me. And then other parts, on, again, as I said in the beginning, on the performance side, on the reliability, I'm still very um, connected with the teams that deal with it, and I still do a lot of advisory in that sense. So it has been very gradual in that sense. I feel that I get pushed to, okay, I can't spend enough time anymore for this and that, and I evolve and I try to find basically what is the other thing that excites me then and that keeps my let's say engineer at heart still alive. But definitely today is getting more and more challenging. But the way that I, let's say, offset that is you build the teams to be completely autonomous, so you don't need to completely oversee. You basically trust your VPs, your directors, whatever, and you need to create the environment that they will bring the challenges to you, and you need to trust that you don't need to be micromanaging them. You just basically wait, let's say, for them to ask for help. Of course, you follow up and so on, but it's more about the guidance and trusting people to ask for help instead of trying to micromanage it.
And do you consider, now that you mentioned that, do you consider that being an engineer since the beginning and being in touch with the technical details of the product is an advantage for the role that you have nowadays?
There are definitely advantages and disadvantages, right?
I was going to ask that
Okay.
exactly.
That's a
I
good
would
answer.
say I would say that I prefer to be aware of the disadvantages and work on them. And again, usually the disadvantage is that you have the tendency to jump in, you have the tendency to help people, and you probably prioritize more, let's say, critical things in how can you help people. But actually, that also motivates a lot of people. I would say that at Feedzai, we we have a lot of challenges, and the type of engineers that we brought in are, let's say, addictive in some way to challenges, and it's very good for the team to know that not only the peers but also the leadership understands them, and can even be in many cases um, the guys that they can go and be their rubber ducks, as you would call it, and they know that if they talk to you, they can actually the leadership understands them. So I think in that sense it helps a lot. And again, it's we are in a market. I usually say that we chose likely the worst bundle of challenges, in the sense of we deal with real-time systems, we deal with a lot of data
Sure.
and big data. It's also very critical, and in the sense that we deal with a lot of very big customers, right? And they have a lot of leverage in the end on us. It's not like your average customer spends 50K or 100K. It's usually on the millions, and with that comes a lot of expectations. So it's like a bundle where all of the challenges are there, and then it's important for you to be able, even many times on escalations and so on, you are able to be on the table, and that people actually recognize and respect you, not only from a management perspective but also from a technical knowledge and technical management perspective.
And how scary it is to, so because you were in the beginning and probably you knew the entire code base, and I'm risking to say that, today there is definitely an interesting portion of that code base that you don't ever maybe even took a serious look at it? Is it like super scary to know that your system grew so much that there are actually parts that if you would be on call, you could actually be in trouble. But it's pretty much almost like being a victim of your own success because things just grow. Did you already make peace with that, or do you tend to
Yeah,
struggle with that
I
idea?
would say probably 4 or 5 years ago was that time when, again, you are no longer coding.
Yeah.
You probably do a pull request. I usually, every time I would be on call, I would do a pull request to improve something small and something that I believe it would help on the next situation. But definitely, not knowing a lot of the code base was not on the on call side, because I always been the type of guy that was able to get to a piece of code and quickly help other people debug and so on. I'm bad at other things, but I would say that was one of the good things when I was engineer. I was quickly able to understand other code and reason about it. But actually, from a management perspective or technical management perspective, that was more scary on the sense of, at some point you don't even know, not the overall architecture, but the low level architecture of your services. And of course, in the core components that we built back in the days, it's still a lot of things are still very similar, but there have been a number of them that I didn't even open the source code, right? And in that case, it's like, yeah, it's definitely scary. And uh, and then it's about, you do some questions, and basically you start using that as a way to get more comfort. It doesn't mean that your questions are going to bulletproof your architecture or software, but then it's about, are you bringing the team? Do you trust the team? And
Sure, exactly.
how fast can you trust them? I think that's also something that was very different 10 years ago, and now it's, you had a lot more time to be able to trust someone. And nowadays, with the growth that we have, you don't have enough time to build that trust relationship. So you need to force it. You need to also to take some risks.
No, no, for sure. And one thing that we spoke, so almost 13 years of history at Feedzai. Obviously you can take some time to think if you don't have kind of the answers top of mind, but what sort of kind of two, maybe three moments that definitely, when you stop to think about, you still have kind of goosebumps, butterflies, kind of like moments that really kind of are unforgettable in terms of the Feedzai history. Could you name like two or three, or would it be
Yeah.
unfair?
So there have been many. Let's say there are more that the rush was all there. Mostly, I would say, incidents or situations where you go live for the first time and so on. But I would choose two or three that are more like of landmarks. Even when I have a very bad memory, good, let's say, photographic memory, but I have a very bad memory, which I think it helps. I think it's the human way of protecting yourself for the things that you
Indeed.
but when I look back, I think definitely 2014, we did basically the pivot for fraud some 1 or 2 years before that. But in 2014, in basically 4 months, we landed our three biggest customers at the time. And we were doing a few deals again in Portugal and small things in different space. And suddenly, in basically 4 months, we closed Reliance in India. We closed First Data, which is our still one of our biggest customers, which is the largest payment processor in the world.
Wow.
And also another big bank in the US, and all of this in 3 months, which then led to Paulo moved to India, me and Bizarro and Pedro Barata moved to the US, basically each one to support one of these customers and make sure that we didn't fall. So that definitely was, I would say, the proof of let's say the Feedzai as we shifted to, or we found our product market fit. Then 2017, I think it was a very important moment for us in the sense of where we are today. It was the first time where we sold, in this case for Lloyd's Bank, our service in the cloud, right? And because we have been, and even until recently, we have been building software that you would ship to the customer, and they would operate on their data centers. Which for today's world it seems very weird, right? But it's still how many banks work.
Sure.
And at the time, 2017, absolutely no one would believe that you could do a large bank not only in the cloud but operated by yourself in a SaaS way. So that definitely changed our way because we were 100% on-prem, and I think it opened the eyes that, hey guys, this is actually possible. You can do this, and this basically leads me to the second. I would say this would be a smaller one, but the second one is by the end of 2020, we were able to actually get the support of the leadership, of Nuno, of the board to will go fully SaaS in a world where basically all of our competitors don't have more than 5 or 10% of customers in this model. We basically 1 year after, we are our large majority of customers is operating in a SaaS world. So it's Feedzai Cloud, fully operated this way. Being the fintechs, being the very large banks that we operate, and that is completely changing the way that the company is, right? Because you change the way you develop, you change the way you sell, you change the way you support it. It's a completely different company. So I think those first, when we sold and we saw, okay, there's definitely a market here, and these were not like small contracts, were very large contracts, and then this shift, because I think it will be how we still keep the edge on the market itself.
Well, and again, back to this whole journey of 13 years. So another difference, it's the size of the team, right? That
Yep.
you also saw it growing. Any tips for who is watching these episodes to grow a team? Any criteria that you always kept in mind while hiring new people to help growing the team?
I would say that has been one of the biggest challenges that we have faced, because we always been very, I wouldn't say picky or strict, but definitely very demanding of the skills that we have on the team, both on the cultural side as well as on the technical side. And at some point, it becomes a blocker for you, right? And the challenge for us was you start to relax, especially on the technical side, and we still have those challenges, and especially in Portugal for the size of challenges that we have, the size of data that we would deal. There were not many companies that would be dealing with that type of scale. And of course, it's easy to say, okay, go to Google, go to Facebook, any tech company, and they are 1,000 times bigger in terms of the data that they handle. That's definitely right. And actually, the solutions that they have probably won't work for us because it doesn't make sense. And that has been a real struggle. So we always kept focus on the curiosity of people, the way that people wanted to grow, and actually have been until recently much more of a company that grows people than you go and you hire the top senior talent and you try to build a company based on that. And definitely that has been, especially over the past 3-4 years with the market completely hot and changing. How do you balance your responsibility, let's say, as a manager, and in the end there is a business running? The market can be completely let's say, completely speculated. But in the end, you need to be responsible. And one thing is you are responsible for 5, 10, 20 people. Another thing is you are responsible as a company for 650, 750, 1,000
Yeah.
people. And, and then you start seeing examples of layoffs and so on. And that has been always, since day one of the drivers of the three co-founders is we prefer to grow slower, but we will never want to fire people because we are running out of money. We respect a lot. We prefer to go slower than be
Sure.
irresponsible. Let's say I'm not saying irresponsible, but be, let's say, more aggressive and then having those consequences. So definitely that trade-off of you want the best talent, the market is very hot, you want to be responsible, has been very challenging. The way that you try to make sure is you want your engineers and your managers to be able to be comfortable of working and wanting to work with that person, and you want to see that these guys basically want to learn and are able to learn. If you are able to learn and you have the right mindset, you definitely can strive at Feedzai, and I would say at any company.
No, for sure, for sure. And tell me one thing. Throughout your career, I'm pretty sure that you had like tons of learnings, things that you did remarkably well, maybe some things that didn't go exactly like you would expect. What sort of advice could you give to your younger self? You know, when we were kind of, starting the journey, you were like, the 5 of the 6, you were kind of writing what you thought the company would kind of grow, if you could actually send a message back, what advice would that be to your younger self?
So it's always hard because it's like when you are teaching your kids, right? It doesn't matter how many times you tell them, they will never listen because you need to go through some of the situations.
Indeed.
So one of the things was, and I think especially for the ones that have worked with me, I have a bit of, let's say, an image of being very harsh and aggressive. I usually, it's hard to distinguish that part, but I usually use a quote that actually it's from that Bizarro uses a lot, which is be hard on problems, be soft on people. And many times it's hard when you are being hard on the problem that people understand that you are being harsh with them, right?
I
And,
see.
and there are different ways to communicate. There are different ways to be harsh on problems and soft on people. So I would say definitely that part is something that I've learned over the time, and especially of course as becoming a manager and then manager of managers and a leader. That significantly changes what you need to communicate to people. And sometimes when you are always trying to fix things and you are trying to get better and always get better, it's easy for you to focus, let's say, only on the bad things, because those are the things that you need to fix, right?
Sure.
Definitely that part and the recognition and the way that you communicate is something that I would wish, let's say, to be better early on in the career. And probably on the technical side, I think we always have very strong opinions on, we don't want to be hyped or go with the trends. And I think there was, I wouldn't say a mistake, but I think we overlooked the way that we looked at our architecture and how all of the trend of cloud native and microservices was emerging, because we always looked at it as this should solve a technical problem, but actually as we grow, especially for the growth side, I think microservices and in a different way to basically develop software actually solves people's problems and not actually technical problems, right? Is how can you enable teams to scale? How can
Yeah.
you reduce communication across teams and dependencies? So definitely that part, we always looked at it as, okay, this won't solve any of the technical problems that we have. It also works, but it's not going to be better. but definitely for the people growth and how can you set up more teams and enable faster growth. That's definitely a change that I would say I would start early on, even that we have evolved the product and then we are moving now into that direction.
Very good point. Very good point.
It's always good to have these insights of someone that already went through the whole journey. Well, I think let's move to some final questions. I would continue talking, but well, we are limited on time. Pedro, do you want to start with the first one?
Oh yes, absolutely. So this pretty much like the three questions that you're going to ask you. So this one I really love to ask because it's like super unexpected. Usually, what you can get out of that. And I really don't know exactly what to answer when people ask me that, so it's kind of a little bit of unfair. So sorry, Diogo. But my question I have for you right now is, what do you believe that is your superpower?
Actually, that question is, as I said, it's always very challenging, and it's actually the type of thing that I don't do that specific question on interviews, but there's always different ways of trying to get what you are better at and so on.
Yeah.
And as you know, I've basically all my career has been at Feedzai, so it's not that I've done a lot of interviews. So, but I actually, but I actually think about that is like I'm doing all of these questions, but how should I answer them? And I actually think my best skill, and some people would say it's my worst skill, but it's to do questions. I think
super interesting.
I think being able to question people is the best way to get, let's say, the best out of them. So many times I know that I can't do better, but I know it's not good enough, right? And many times by being able to challenge people by doing questions, making people looking at things in a different way, we can actually get to a better outcome and a better solution, which I would never be able to get it by myself. But I think I've developed this skill of constantly questioning people, questioning and trying to make them see in a different way, look at different perspectives. Why don't you try this way? Why don't you go that way? And in the end, the solution is probably not what I've questioned them or how I drove them, but definitely comes out of or a completely different way. And I think it also helps people to find skills or abilities that they usually are not as aware.
No, for sure. I definitely believe that knowing the questions that should be asked is way more important than having the answer, because knowing which questions to ask will always get you to the answer that's that is there for you. Knowing an answer doesn't mean that you will know the next answer. And no, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely, very good.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, that good one.
That actually even relates to that part of, does it help to be an engineer or not? I think that's one of the parts where it actually helps a lot. Is you can still make certain questions. The business, how the customers operate, and you can still do a lot of questions, especially on the technical side.
Yeah, good point. Let's go for the second one. Now, remove any limits. You can think anything that you that you would like to do. Imagine that you could have any job title. It could be for one day, just for some hours. But what you would like to see yourself doing?
That's a very difficult one. I actually, we did an exercise a few years back of who you wanted to be. This was actually it was within Feedzai, but who do you want it to be within Feedzai? And I was not able to find something better than I do. I really love what I do, but if you are on the, let's say, on on the game of let's try different titles with let's say with random names and so on. I'm also a fan of TV shows of emergency services, so like firefighters uh, or so. I would say the battalion chief in the sense of you are the guy that needs to keep this thing running. But in the end, if you need to jump in, you need to go into a fire, and you leave no one behind. That's usually how I work. Right? Is it's not that I'm putting out a fire, but customers are always the most important thing for us, and you don't leave someone behind. Just again, it's their responsibility to fix it, but in the end, you need to support. So if you need to go in, you need to be awake. You need to open your IDE and help debug or whatever it is. You do it. So I usually see it in that way, and I like that type of analogy.
Very well.
Interesting.
Last one for us to finish. And knowing that you're into CrossFit, so I'm pretty sure that you're super thoughtful about calories and weight and stuff. You live in Portugal. You already lived in the United States, like you've mentioned. I'm pretty sure you probably already had an opportunity to go to India also to, for working purposes. Tell us about desserts. Tell us, kind of desserts that you really appreciate, from all this journey of traveling and working in different places.
So let me actually tell you why I started CrossFit. And there were two reasons. One for health reasons. My back, my neck, sometimes they were hurting. But the other reason was I should be able to eat whatever I want. And basically
good strategy.
relatively fit. So I'm actually biggest fan of Portuguese food and desserts especially. So I live in Coimbra, so conventional sweets or desserts are definitely one of my specialties. And I really, let's say, suffer when I go abroad in general about food, right? But I would probably say, again, probably the time I spent more was the US, and I'm still to find good cheesecake than here in Portugal. And it might be, you can probably find it many places, but cheesecake definitely. If you ask me the flavor, probably lemon or key lime cheesecake, definitely my favorite. And it's very unlikely that I go to the US and I don't get a piece of cheesecake. And about desserts, some of the countries I don't think actually, I think we have a very good standard in Portugal, right? So, but definitely probably Italy with panna cotta and ice cream or gelato. Definitely good ones that I still have here in Portugal, but get them there, it's definitely different. To be honest, I don't remember other countries where desserts were the thing of okay, I need to get back because of that.
Very well, very well.
A final touch, a final sweet touch to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Diogo. I think we all learned, at least I learned. I hope that our listeners learned as well. You shared some good tips, and it's always good to see someone that is still passionate after all these years in a company. Sure. It's amazing. And so I hope that our listeners also enjoyed. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diogo. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you, Diogo.
And see you in the next episode.